Hello, everybody, and welcome to Cinema Savvy. It is myself, George, joined once more by Ayman for another review. And this is going to be a spoiler review on the latest Marvel Cinematic Universe film, Ant-Man and the Wasp, Quantumania, which is now out in cinemas worldwide. We're going to give some spoiler-filled thoughts and go through the film. But first of all, Ayman, how are you doing today?
Yeah, not too bad. It's weird to be recording about this time on a Sunday afternoon.
Yeah, it is. I mean, when I was trying to set this up, I was like, it's BAFTA Sunday. You know, BAFTA's, I think the red carpet's starting now. We're at 5. The ceremony starts at 6. At that time, it doesn't get aired live, so you have to hide off the web until they start broadcasting it at 7 o'clock. So it's one of those weird days. And as I said, we're heading into an insane month. We've got Cocaine Bear next week. We've got Creed the week after. March, you've also got John Wick. Some other ones I'm missing, 65, the Adam Drive one. There's a lot of films coming out in the next couple of weeks, which is great. It's a great way to kickstart people getting back to the cinemas. And this is probably the first big film, per se, of 2023 in terms of blockbuster scale. And kind of where we'll go with that, as we're doing this live, as we're happy for people to comment, we want to do spoilers. We've both seen it. If you haven't watched it, the film, maybe you want to watch this and know people's thoughts. I've got extreme thoughts, but I'm not going to go through them yet. But we want to hear from you, so please do comment with your thoughts on Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania. And if you do like this video, do let us know. Hit that like button. Do subscribe. Marvel's not going away. We know on the report this week, though, there's going to be a lot less Marvel moving forwards, as announced. So there's going to be 2 streaming shows this year rather than 4. They've put some plans on ice. I'm guessing at Comic-Con we're going to get a revised 5-year timeline plan because it's all gone a bit over the top. And if you want to find out other videos, you can get us on our social medias, Twitter and Instagram at cinema_savvy, Facebook and letterboxd.com/cinema-savvy with a link to Redbubble in the description below. But before we get into it, Ayman, I just want to ask you quickly, what are your thoughts on heading into this film and maybe your thoughts on the first 2 Ant-Man films?
So, going into the film, I was more interested in Kang as a character. I mean, Paul Rudd does great as Ant-Man, but I don't like Ant-Man's just there for me. It was more Kang that drew me into this film. But yeah, Ant-Man 1 I enjoyed. But Ant-Man 2 was okay. It was just Ant-Man and the Wasp. The villain was really interesting, but again, with Marvel and the way they treat their villains, they just killed her off. But apparently she's coming back in Thunderbolts. But yeah, I mean, Ant-Man as a character, interesting enough. But this was more, I was more intrigued about Kang and how they're going to do him in this, to be honest.
Yeah, I'm kind of with that. The first Ant-Man I love. It's one of my favorite Marvel films. He's probably my favorite MCU character from that. The second one, it was that really weird one where the World Cup was on, so the UK got it like a month after America. I personally think it's quite a relevant film by the credit scene. Obviously, we know that tied into Endgame and whatnot, but the second one I think was killed with its release. You don't want to be that film in between Infinity War and Endgame. It sort of had to be with the credit scene, I guess. But it's one of them where when they announced the third one, I was happy for a third one to be put into production. I'm like you, Kang's the biggest draw for me for this film. Jonathan Majors, who is gonna have the year of his life, and he's already had phenomenal years, but this year, certainly this time next year, we might be talking about him getting his Oscar nomination or win, perhaps. Maybe it's too early, but he just had an incredible film premiere at Sundance. We've had Devotion drop on Amazon in the UK. We got it 3 months late. We've got this, we've got Creed. He is everywhere, and I say kickstarting as Kang. Obviously, his first appearance was actually in Loki in the season finale, which is something I guess is teased in a credit scene for season 2 as well. But that's probably not my biggest draw. I was always up for Kang being a villain in this, but I was also intrigued that when they were marketing this film, I was like, oh, we're going back to Ant-Man doing a heist, we're taking things back to the way it was. And it is very, very different to however they've marketed it. We've got Martin in the comments as well. Martin, I know you watched it the other day. What I'm going to kind of go into, and I don't like going in on films like this, but just initial thoughts before we get into it, before we get into the story. I'm going to be really blunt and upfront. I absolutely despise everything about this film. I think this is quite comfortably the worst film in the entire MCU. And I think without Jonathan Majors, I might have watched one of the worst films I've watched in 10, 15 years. He has single-handedly carried this film. And I just think it's utter repentful as a thing. So that's my initial thoughts. I want to get them out of the way because I want to harp on that too much, and then we'll be able to go into it. But you're different than mine. So what are your initial thoughts? And hopefully people at home let us know, because I don't want to. I'm not just going to come in and just slag it off every 10 seconds. I'm just getting them out there just so people know, and then I'll give reasons to why as we get through it.
So I enjoyed it. So midway through, I was thinking, okay, it's not great. Nothing's really happening. So I started to see it as more of a Kang film than a Ant-Man film. At that point, I started to enjoy it a little bit more because Kang was the reason I went. Kang is the thing that I'm watching for in this film. But with the sort of, I mean, it's not the worst Marvel film in my opinion. Eternals is infinitely worse because that doesn't, like, now we know it doesn't have an impact on anything else that happened in the MCU at all. And the fact, and Iron Man 3 as well. I despise that film. Purely because, like, I just don't like that film. I've tried to watch it multiple times and it just doesn't work. I mean, the guy breathes fire at one point. Okay.
We got Shang-Chi out of it, didn't we? So at least we got the Mandarin done properly after.
Yeah, well, that was the thing. I mean, yeah, it was the Mandarin. That was the thing that irked me the most. But Kang, and if you take this as Kang Quantumania, it works fine. It's not the worst. It's not the best though. But that's my sort of general thoughts.
No, that's fair. And I know that there are people that have liked it. Some people, Dave, who obviously is on that channel a lot, he tweeted yesterday saying if you switch your brain off, it makes it more watchable, which is absolutely fair to say as well. I don't think I've ever had my brain switched on for a Marvel film, if I'm being honest. But yeah, it's awkward this because I'm with you on Kang, and because it's an Ant-Man film, we have to sort of talk about Ant-Man first. But if we go so far as back, and I'm not going to sit here and do rumors, etc. Like, I know people that worked on this. I know stuff happened on set. I know there are changes. I know there's a lot of things changing. There were reshoots literally like 2 months ago in LA, and everyone was on it getting autographs from Paul Rudd. This is a film that's been, I think, butchered quite a lot. And I think the elephant in the room is that this is the first film of Phase 5, which completely caught me off guard. Just because Phase 4 isn't, to me, a phase. There's no link up, there's no continuity. Phase 4, I don't mind. But they've sort of just grouped these like, these are individual films that it's like an epilogue to Phase 3, or it's a prologue to Phase 5, whatever you want to say. Last year at Comic-Con, they were just like, boom, this is now a phase and it's done. And I'm sort of sat there like, I don't need a phase to end on a high or whatnot. Technically, Phase 2 ended on the first Ant-Man film, but it's never felt like it's not got going, but it's not had the direction for it to end as a phase. And, we know Guardians is the film after this, which looks like it fits in with everything else in the last 2 years. It's going to be a character story. It's going to be like an emotional drama. And that fits in with this. But Ant-Man and Quantumania, I guess, if this is going to really kickstart the multiverse, which Loki's already done, which is part of Phase 4, which in turn doesn't make any logical sense. I think there's a lot of issues happening at Marvel. Now, we know Disney is an overview. Bob Iger is back in now. I think this is really important to... People want to talk about how the quality's dipped within Marvel. And I know this isn't technically an Ant-Man point, but obviously with Bob Chapek, there's been a very much focused stream on Disney Plus. Quantity, not quality. Too many shows, too many things happening. There's been criticism. Viewing figures have plummeted. Let's be honest, financially, no streaming services are profitable. That's why Netflix are the way they are. And that's why Disney and Warner Brothers have the money to have a streaming service, but they just want to get subscribers. They can't make profit off it. Now, Bob Iger's back. The first call of action for Marvel is they've announced this week that we're only going to have Secret Invasion and Loki Season 2 this year. The Echo and, Echo and something else that's already filmed are going to come next year now. Really frustrating me. What's the other one? But
was it a TV
that's
show?
a big... Yeah, there was going to be 4 this year. Now there's 2. And the report is that Disney are going to streamline. They're going to calm down with Marvel. They're doing too much too quickly. Star Wars, on the other hand, they're going to be announcing films. They want Star Wars back at the big screen. So Disney's in a really awkward phase. And it's kind of, I think, affecting Marvel more than people might think. and I hope that makes some logical sense. And I think Ant-Man's the first butcher in all of this. That if you go to the behind the scenes of this film, there were reports that Paul Rudd wrote the first draft of this film, and it was not rejected as such, but the reports that have been going around are that Paul Rudd wanted Ant-Man 3 to be about the core characters from Ant-Man 1 and 2, and it would be them going off in the quantum realm to fight MODOK and AIM. And obviously, you don't know who AIM is. They're from the comics. They're with MODOK. And that was rejected by Feige and also rejected by Peyton Reed. And they said they wanted, quote, an Avengers scale film, which to me is impossible when you call it Ant-Man.
Yeah.
Which fits in with what we're both saying, that this is a Kang film, right? This is Kang's, to me, first proper appearance. And he's amazing in this. And the character's intricate, but to me, they've got everything wrong by doing this to an Ant-Man film. That not small in scale Ant-Man, but the Ant-Man films have always been like grounded stories, like 2 heist films. It's specifically after a big team-up film because it's lower stakes. It's not important, but it's like a small family story. And this is where my overview heading to the story of this film, I'm completely against, is they all get sucked off into the quantum realm. Sorry, I keep calling it Quantumania. It's not. It's a really frustrating title, isn't it? I'm sorry. I just think of WrestleMania or something. But and obviously they have to. I mean, the second trailer did the whole film. They have to then work with Kang to save Cassie to get out from there, which I just think is fundamentally like awful. I think it's unfair on the people that have been involved on the other Ant-Man films. We've actually lost some incredible key characters. Supporting characters from the Ant-Man films. Louis is the most obvious one. Everyone's loved those Louis recite scene. Not in this film at all in the slightest. I know that we get oh god, what's his name? The card trick Wu at the beginning of the cameo. And it just inherently to me doesn't feel like an Ant-Man film, and the story that kind of goes with it. I was just sat there bored, just watching. The whole film is just them on a soundstage with a green screen, like people are going on the Star Wars prequels. Like this is this was shot in London. This was shot on Pinewood. It was using stagecraft, which is the Mandalorian tech. Peyton Reed's directed the Mandalorian. He knows how that technology works. He's been involved, but certainly a whole film set in the quantum realm. I think not just defeats the purpose of Ant-Man, but I think it's Marvel trying to kill 2 birds with one stone. Like, we had Janet in there for 30 years. Can we now tie her into the origin of Kang? Because for someone that's betrayed him and made him wait 30 years in the quantum realm, he's quite happy just to have a chill there. He doesn't actually want to, kill her like he does everyone else. So, kind of off that, what are your thoughts on the actual story of this film?
I thought it was. I mean, the beginning and the middle is just there. Yeah. The end, sort of like last half an hour, I think it's like that. I enjoyed that a lot more than the rest of the film because you have the initial bit where they get sucked in. Like, I could care less. Okay, they're in the quantum realm now. The middle bits where they're going to see Bill Murray and Ant-Man and Cassie off doing their thing and stuff like that. That's sort of there. Yeah. But then the ending when it's the sort of raid against Kang Citadel, and they're having that big fight, stuff like that. That was a little bit more interesting because it shows how prepared Kang is. But the only thing with that is you have the ants that are just the sort of like plot device of, okay, yeah, they can kill Kang. Okay. But yeah, I mean, it's just sort of there. I was more intrigued about, because with me and Marvel films, I enjoy like the origin bits. So like when they talk about like how Kang was introduced, how he was born, stuff like that. That interests me more than the actual film.
Yeah, I'm with you on this. And like every time, the one thing I hate, and we'll get into character shortly, but we all know Kang's going to be this big threat moving forward. He's going to be the overarching villain for the next few years of Marvel. Sequel has been announced, Kang Dynasty has been announced, and in this film, you get him in that opening scene. As here's him crash landed, and where I started to not get lost with it, but they refer to him as he from that logic of we're too scared to say his name. And the problem is, I don't mind it when a film does this, but when they do this for like 45, 50 minutes, it goes so extremely overboard. You don't get bored, but you just like, just say his name and get it done with, or get to the origin, because we know there's a story to be told. We all want to see that. We all want to know, how has he ended up here? What's his scenario? Why are they afraid of this person? What has he done to this land? And when we get it, it's almost like 40 minutes after they've even first mentioned it. And it's such a strange way for them to do this. And again, putting it within an Ant-Man film, and it has no business being an Ant-Man film. And, I'm not going to sit here and say I know every comic off the back of my head. Of course I don't. But it's just one of those things where if you look at how the MCU's operated, how they've treated these characters, you put this trilogy together, 1, 2, 3, and you're going to get to the third one. You're literally going to think, what the fuck's going on here? Like, it's so overboard.
Very disjointed.
Yeah, and like Thor has been a very similar one. People, say Thor 1 and 2, and then I guess now you've got 4, 3, and 4, which are their own two part of the Taika ones, but at least they inherently work as Thor films for himself. This just cannot function that. It's almost like Captain America 3 being, Civil War. It worked as a Captain America film. They made sure that Captain America side of things stayed true alongside Civil War. Whereas where this is completely lost is Ant-Man is so far away from what you've had in the other films, and kind of getting into the characters as well with Scott Lang himself. Paul Rudd's fine. Paul Rudd's always going to be fine as Ant-Man. We know he's played this character multiple times. We're not still going to sit here and say he's playing himself, but Paul Rudd has nailed this role. It's almost a role where he might be playing himself. Who knows? But where I'm completely lost goes back to casting. Now I don't like, young actresses obviously get a lot of abuse and whatnot, but Catherine Newton's been cast as Cassie Lang, who I think has been in one of those Netflix shows, and they replaced the actress that played her in Endgame. Now in Endgame, of course, you have that amazing moment where he's gone to find her and she's aged up, and they have that moment. I remember I was a bit emotional the first time I saw that, but the recasting of the actress from Cassie, I think, is terrible. I think, obviously, we know she's gone from, being a child to like a teenager. Obviously, you're not going to be the same as she was when she was a kid. But it went for this really pointless, edgy teenager in jail type thing. I'm trying to help people, but it felt such a far cry from what the relationship was in the first films, that everything Paul Rudd had ever done was to be with Cassie. And then in this, it's like we're playing we're not fully there anymore with each other. And I'm just sort of sat there like, I don't believe this. Like this doesn't feel like the characters we've had. I'm not talking performances, the actual writing of the characters is so fundamentally off course from what came before. And as this film gets on, I don't even feel like there's been a relationship built. I don't think there's any chemistry with Paul Rudd and with Catherine Newton. And this is where I get lost viewing this as an Ant-Man film alongside a Marvel film, is that I just don't have any feeling towards it. And I think what made the Ant-Man films tick is the relationship of characters. I mentioned supporting characters earlier, but the characters of all had sort of character arcs within each film. And in this, it's just not there to begin with. It ends the same as it starts. Nothing has changed. There's a backhand joke that Kang could come back, which we all know is obviously going to happen. But what are your thoughts on that father-daughter relationship? Because to me, I'm lost with this. I think it's absolutely abysmal. And I think it's quite insulting to the other films.
I don't mind it. I mean, there is that relationship there, but it's the fact that, so the origin, like the way they set it up was that Ant-Man or Paul Rudd was in jail for however long. Yeah. So he lost that time to begin with. And then he was blinked out. Well, he was in the quantum realm. He wasn't blinked out. And Cassie had to get on with her life, and 5 years passed, and then he came back. So at that point, we didn't see much of a relationship anyway. But then the fact that I don't think they're going for the sort of edgy teen going to jail, because the way that they said it is not she's misbehaving. She's not trying to be edgy. She's actually being like politically active. And that sort of disconnected there, because Paul Rudd is happy just doing his own thing, whereas Cassie sees him as an Avenger and he should be helping people, but it's the sort of the people that are doing more to help out the world and stuff like that, which she is a part of, and that's why she's going to jail, because we know that, like, in the real world, political activists do get arrested, sent to jail, because the purpose of a protest is not to be the purpose, and the way that you get your voice heard is to be not a nuisance but loud and sort of disrupting people. So the fact that she's going to jail for these sorts of things, I think, pushes her forward as a character, because it shows that she is politically active, and that's what she wants from her dad, because he is an Avenger. I mean, he's a superhero, he's an Avenger, so the world would listen to what he has to say, and that's what she's like. That's why she's frustrated with him.
I get that, but doesn't it just read as just another typical teenage performance where they just fell out of their dad for no reason, though? Because that's
No, because the reasons that she gives are valid to a point. I mean, if
then they
you're
don't get developed, though, do they? That's the problem. Is that she says it in a scene and it's not brought up again. It's just like, oh, we just needed her in jail to go for it, and it's
brought up it's brought up a few times, but to the point where, I mean, it is developed slightly, because to begin with, he's surprised that she's in jail. It's brought up again, and it turns out that she's been in jail a few times. But the fact that he is doing his own thing and he is being Scott Lang rather than being in her life shows that he has missed out on those 5 years.
Yeah, that's fair, and this is it. But I'm thinking Endgame again. You get the actress who, again, you get. I think Emma Thurman played her in that, and they get to see on the doorstep where there's actually emotionally, there's actually connection, there's chemistry, there's performance. There's nothing with Catherine Newton. They don't come across as a father-daughter duo, and this goes back to the writing of it. It's that it's just so awfully written, the whole thing from start to end. There's nothing in there. You get the odd jail thing and that. You get the birthday scene at the end, but by taking this relationship, this entire film, and putting it inside the quantum realm, and as you said, you look at it from a Kang perspective. The moment they're at quantum realm, we're not thinking about Ant-Man, his family. We're thinking about, when are we going to get to Kang? What's going on here? What's happening moving forward? If they'd have took that idea, had the whole film on not on Earth, but back in reality as the other ones have been, I think you could develop that. You could really work into that, but they don't. And this is where those like set reports are starting to lean in now, where it's like there was clearly a difference of ideas of what the studio want and what the cast want. And I think Paul Rudd as well, who's, let's be honest, he's the main reason these films ever worked is because Edgar Wright did the script for the first Ant-Man film. You know, he left 3 weeks before filming started. He cast everyone. They wanted to be in an Edgar Wright film, not a Marvel film. They wanted to be in an Edgar Wright film, and he left with 3 weeks. And that first Ant-Man film stands out across every other one for all those reasons, that he basically did all the groundwork for them just to film it and edit it. And I think Peyton Reed is sort of shown with this and the last one how incapable he is of managing that. Now, again, you've got issues on set, which is fine. You've got Michael Douglas come out saying he'd only come back if they're going to kill off his character, which is something you never want to hear an actor say on a red carpet for a film you're premiering. There's so many things inherently wrong with this, and I think it all starts with the script and kind of lining up with that. If we even talk about hope, so we know the film's called Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania, but for all intents and purposes, Hope has nothing to do in this film. There's no character development for her. She doesn't get much to do. I know, obviously, I'm not going to get into the politics of Evangeline Lilly. That I don't think that has anything to do with how her character's been written. Even the stuff with her mom, which they could have really leaned into. Janet gets a lot to do, but I think Hope and Hank are just really chucked to the side. Hope a bit more than Hank's. At least Hank Pym gets a great moment. Obviously, you've got Michael Douglas to want to use him, but the Evangeline Lilly stuff, for someone that's meant to share the title of the film, I've really struggled with, and I was kind of curious, like, your thoughts on that as well.
To be honest, there were points where I forgot she was actually in the film. I didn't realize it was called Ant-Man and the Wasp until the end credits when it showed the name. I thought it was called Ant-Man Quantumania.
Should have been called that, because she just gets nothing to do, and it's not.
Yeah,
it's not a political thing.
There is nothing that she does in this film. I mean, she helps Ant-Man, Scott Lang, Paul Rudd grab the core, at the end when she like goes into when he's doing the heist bit. But apart from that, I mean, she's just there. She's sort of like, um, she's just another superhero. She didn't do much though. I think her collective screen time out of the whole film was what, like 20, 30 minutes, if that. And that was mostly all in the last battle.
And that's it. And that's what's kind of frustrating again is, I know this, I mean, Ant-Man and the Wasp, the second one, it was a massive focus. We had it developed in the first film. She'd get her own wings. We got to see a relationship with dad in the last one, rescue her mother. There's so much going there. And again, you get into this one, and it just feels like just a studio button being ticked for just this film, this character, this everything. And it's hitting this point now of Marvel that they obviously, I'm not going to sit and say the films aren't successful. They clearly still are, but their box office numbers are dropping off. There's no hiding it anymore. This is going to open to 100 mil domestic in America, which sounds about right, as you'd expect from an opening weekend from Marvel. But the big question is now, is it going to start doing a DC? Is it going to have a 70% drop off on its second week? That's what everyone's going to start watching out for. And it's frustrating because everyone's losing out on this. The audience is losing out on good storytelling. The fans losing out on good storytelling. The actors, I mean, if I'm actually going to give the overview of the performances, I genuinely am being sincere in saying that Jonathan Majors seems like the only one that's actually acting. Everyone else feels like, I mean, and I kind of see this as well. It is that sort of Star Wars prequel thing where you can see the green screen, you can see how awfully not edited it is, but the technology from the volume isn't fundamentally there yet for stories. And that's kind of one of my biggest issues with when they used the volume. That The Mandalorian worked because you had Greg Fraser, who helped develop the tech, shoot it. And the same with the Batman. He shot the Batman, so he knows that technology. Whereas Taika Waititi, Peyton Reed of this, when they've had their Marvel films on the volume, it just looks rubbish. And I don't think it's their fault. It's certainly not the visual artist's fault, because there are countless reports, more of it's happening, where we know that no visual effects artist wants to work for Marvel. They're getting chucked from project to project to project. They're being underpaid. They're working over hours. Marvel will come in over a week's notice, say, you got to redo this entire scene, which is almost impossible. So one of the reasons for the drop-off in quality for me, and this is why I'm trying to lean out of taking that criticism of this, is that it's not these artists' fault. At the end of the day, when you've got these films, and the budget for these, I'm going to assume they haven't got it fully up yet, but the minimum budget is going to be 160 mil. That is, this film looks like a TV episode, and I'm not talking like a good one. I'm talking like a Doctor Who from the mid-noughties. It looks so painfully obvious, and it must be harder for the actors that they're on set and they're being told, all of this is going to look like this behind you. And I'm just trying to picture Michael Douglas, one of the most respected actors, generational talent, who's been told to come up to set and he's just going to stick his hands basically, in jelly for a couple of weeks. And you just sort of sat there saying, at what point are they going to wake up to this? And I think the biggest issue I have for this film is the writing. Now, it turns out, and I don't know if you knew this, one of the writer of this film is a writer on Rick and Morty, which I think explains a lot of the crap jokes. And I'm not saying crap is not funny. There might be for some. Now, for me, there was only 20 people in my screening today, and it was the morning, so I know it's not going to be as busy as an evening. But almost no one was laughing, bar the odd Paul Rudd one-liner, which is a Paul Rudd one-liner. But when I was watching this, you could see that Rick and Morty stuff, all the weird alien designs, like a broccoli person. And I think the Quantum Realm, it just felt like one of those really awful TV type of things. And my biggest worry now is that the writer of this is meant to be writing Kang Dynasty, which, if I was Marvel, I would immediately remove him from, because aside from Kang, he's clearly a TV writer incapable of writing for films. This feels like an elongated episode of a TV show, and that's where I'm really struggling. I can't fundamentally view this film as a film, and at least with other Marvel films, even if they're built like Iron Man 2, right? What's the obvious criticism? Oh, it's setting up the other films. There's still a film in there with Mickey Rourke, his parent, his dad losing the company, everything. It just wasn't executed as well. And with this one, I don't see a coherent film within this at all. I literally just see them doing let's get Ant-Man in the quantum realm, but we're going to bring Kang, so moving forward, we're going to have loads of Kangs, and that's how I feel. But like, what did you think? Again, like the writing, some of the characters.
Yeah, so that's the thing. Like I said, like not all that happens in the beginning and the middle. It doesn't push anything forward. The odd gems in there are the bits where Kang is explained, and like how his character set up. Like he says that he was exiled. He's from a different timeline. Something else is coming. Stuff like that. Again, it's bringing it all back to Kang. The sort of like Ant-Man, the Wasp, Cassie, Janet, and Hank aspects, they don't get pushed forwards. They don't get taken backwards, but nothing gets pushed forwards in those areas. Like, I mean, with me, Janet as a character, I mean, that was frustrating. Because it's like, it's obvious that you are scared of this person. Now you have two superheroes here with you. Why don't you communicate what is scaring you so much so that they don't go in blind? Because it's just so frustrating. Like, why wouldn't you say like how powerful he is, stuff like that? Like, it's so weird. But yeah, writing wise, nothing happens. The visual effects, I watched it in the IMAX. I know that you watched it in 2D.
Yeah.
So I think with the IMAX, the colors and stuff in the quantum realm popped a lot more. But that was a visual effect thing that I think the visual effects team did their job really well in this one compared to other ones. But the story and the writing is just, it's off.
Yeah, I can't get the budget figures, but basically Thor was 250 mil last year. The last few Marvel films have all been $200 million budgets. So, for assumption wise, you'd assume this at the lowest is probably 180. It just doesn't. I don't know. So on Friday, I watched Titanic at the cinema. I know it's 25 years old, but when you see films like that and the cost they are, you see the budget on screen. And I'm at this point now, which is happening, and this isn't Marvel. This is DC. This is the the whole like overuse of CGI, overworking CGI departments, etc. You're not seeing that budget on screen, and it's quite not frustrating, but some simple things that I get the quantum realm couldn't be practical, but there's a way you could do something different. It just never feels like they're there. And the one set design thing I give credit to is Kang's like don't be a throne room or control tower, but you can tell immediately when's it set, when's it green screen. And the problem is, and I'm going to just say this, and I think there's a few people that start to say the same now. Last year we had Top Gun Maverick. Last year we had Avatar: The Way of Water. There's been other big blockbuster films. Obviously, Avatar's budget's 400 mil, and that's going to obviously cover future Avatar films as well. But to me, I'm going to go on a pedestal now and say there is no excuse for these films to look crap anymore. And this is my problem, is that the year's 2023, Batman, for example, Batman looks amazing, and its budget was maybe 150 mil. A lot of it was shot practically, but when it was CG, you couldn't ever tell them the amount of money that's just being wasted. And I think it's people are letting it all sound like us. The amount of people saying this isn't new. This is like randomers on Twitter, and it's like, oh, I don't care that it looks crap. I enjoy it, and it's like one defense I've seen is that some of the best things are stuff that doesn't look great. But I'm there like I understand all of that criticism of other things from the past. I understand cult films where the visuals aren't for that. Spider-Man 2002, The Dawn of CGI, it's all practical. CGI stuff stands out because the tech's not there yet. But behind that, there's a filmmaker, there is intentions, there is story, there is character, there is cinematography. So many variables go into films like that, and just sat here hitting this point now. Again, maybe it's because I watched Titanic, maybe because it's the first big film I've seen in cinema since Avatar, but I just think these all look rubbish, and there's no excuse. Iron Man 1 looks bloody amazing. It still is probably one of the best Marvel films. And even when it's CG, you can't tell because it was done properly. And it's going to go back to criticizing again. It's Marvel and their this insane turnaround, this time scale, last minute reshoots, last minute changes. It's going to make their product worse. And this is why it's not early to judge this, but I do not think the box office is going to be kind to say over the next month that not one Marvel film hit $1 billion last year. I think Black Panther, Doctor Strange hit 900 something, Black Panther late 800s. You know, they're not getting those numbers now. Before, free flowing within phase 3, guaranteed. Captain Marvel. You know, I know a lot of people don't like that film. I quite enjoy it. That got like 1.1 billion. If Captain Marvel came out tomorrow, it's not going to hit $1 billion. I think Marvel, through, I will say Disney Plus, has lost a lot of viewers. And there's this bubble on social media, and this is the same for so many franchises. And I know I'm off point now, where they're just people that don't realize that Twitter is a box. It is a small box of social media. You choose the few hundred people you choose to follow. And there are people that think these few hundred people represent 8 billion people on this planet. They think that everyone's aligning the same as them. And that the worst thing about social media is that people don't realize they're in a box. They're in an echo chamber. They get upset when people disagree with them. And I'm just sat there saying, come to the real fucking world, step outside of it, touch grass, as they also like to say, and have a look at why these aren't connecting to people. Last night, okay, it's a one-person test. I showed my dad the trailer for Guardians 3. He loves the first 2 Guardians films. And he just sat there, he's like, I'm just bored of seeing stuff like this now. And it's going to hit a point where Marvel sustained so well. It's hit this peak in 2019. There is going to be a come down from this. And I don't think people are ready for it. And the saddest thing about this come down is that it is going to be the multiverse saga as a whole.
Yeah.
And Kang is going to be fucking amazing as a villain. Jonathan Majors, let's talk about him.
Yeah.
He is one of the best actors at the moment. He is going to be a star. He's going to be an A-lister. He might have that Oscar nomination this time next year. It's way too early to think about it, but Magazine Dreams is the film, if anyone's curious, if you want to read into it. He is amazing in this film. I'm not hiding that. I've shot on this film, but he is what makes this film for me. If someone says, would you recommend this film? I'd say no. But I said, but if you want to see a potential good villain, Jonathan Majors is the one. If this is a film that ends up having to be viewed down the line, you know, if there's a core set that needs to be viewed before Secret Wars, this will be one of them. And I'll sit there saying, okay, the film's crap, but I'm going to get Jonathan Majors. He is so good in this. And this is where it kind of frustrates me more that every time he's on screen, he has this amazing presence that he is quite fearsome when you introduce him. You know, people haven't seen, he's massive, he's ripped. And he did a very funny interview this week where someone asked him what it was like wearing your costume for the first time. He said, I like to tell them to take the fake muscles out. And he had to tell them that I can feel this myself. And I kind of love that because there'd be so many, like, not insecure actors, but it's fair play of an actor saying, I mean, he's obviously done Creed 3. He's absolutely ripped if anyone hasn't seen what he looks like. But I think he's the best thing in this film. And I think certainly for me, at least, as someone that's watched Marvel films most of my life, someone that's watched every film in the MCU, I will still continue to watch them. I don't have a veered interest like I did in the past. I don't have the connection to people at present. I'd like to develop that as the next 3 years come by. I think I'm going to struggle to. But if I know that Kang is going to be here and we're going to get Jonathan Majors on his A game like this, I think we're safe as fans with Jonathan Majors as Kang. The concern is how much the general audience who do bring the money to these films are they going to lose by alienating them? And that's kind of my question. But what were your thoughts on Kang, the performance with him?
I think, I mean, Jonathan Majors blew it out of the water. This film would be infinitely worse if Jonathan Majors wasn't in it. He single-handedly carries this film, which is something that Thanos did when he was in his films as well. He was the most interesting part, but then the caveat with that is that you had the whole of the Avengers. In this, you only have Ant-Man. But Jonathan Majors, I mean, he's coming up in Creed 3. He hasn't been in much, but he is a talent because he's going to be in Creed 3. He's been in this, and the only other thing that I can think of that he's been in, apart from the recent movies that have come out, is Lovecraft Country. Now, I haven't watched that myself. My dad has, and he said Jonathan Majors again was really good in that. So whenever he's in something, he does stand out. He is a really good actor. But yeah, Jonathan Majors is the best thing about this film, hands down.
Yeah, so I've not seen Lovecraft Country. I know a lot of people that have that loved it as well. The Harder They Fall, the Netflix Western film, he's amazing in. That's the first. No, it's not the first I saw him in. I saw him in Five Bloods. He's worked with Spike Lee, and then the one I've not seen, which I think was arguably his big breakthrough, was The Last Black Man in San Francisco. And I've still got a few more to watch of his, but he is going to take everything by storm, I think, moving forward. And if anyone's seen how articulated in his interviews, he's got natural charisma. And that's my favorite kind of villain, is the villains that not like, oh, I like them because they're a villain, they're a bit different, etc., etc. He's bringing something to the table I don't think Marvel haven't. What I kind of love with the premise of Kang, for me at least, as someone who wants to follow these films, it's more the fact that he's coming from the future. He has tech that's different to all of them. And moving forwards, how will they defeat someone that has already defeated them in multiple different timelines? And then you get the whole multiverse stuff, which I can follow, you can follow. We know a lot of friends that can follow that. Can the general audience follow a multiverse storyline? I'm going to be completely honest, no. I think they're going to lose people. But do you know what they will follow? Hugh Jackman coming back to play Wolverine.
Yeah.
Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield coming back to play Spider-Man. What's going to happen now? And this is where I'm torn. With the reaction this film has had, I will say this is, I believe, the lowest review. And now I don't... Rotten Tomatoes, I know everyone loves or they hate it or they're whatever.
Yeah.
There is no right or wrong way to view it. I will say this about this, that some people don't realize that if it says 48% of Rotten Tomatoes, that does not mean people have said, I think this film is rated 48% good. No. What it means is they've asked people, basically, do you like it, yes or no? And 48% of people said, yes, I like it. So for a start, a lot of people miss how that function works. Then you have the nonsense that's an audience score, where it is always 90 plus because people don't like seeing their favorite films being shut on. A film like Black Adam that no one watched has an 88% audience score. That's irrelevant because no one watched it. It's just a few that did are putting that as a yes, I also love this film. So there's so many freak things wrong with all of that. But I think Marvel will start to be worried now. And if this film does drop off next week, I will be genuine. And if they're not planning it, I think they're going to start going for more of the older actors. And ultimately, if you are doing a multiverse, if you are doing this multiverse storyline with Kang, he's going to be around for a few years, bringing in Hugh Jackman does make sense. Bringing in, Patrick Stewart's been linked this week because he did an interview about it.
Yeah.
Tobey Maguire said he'll come back. Garfield probably would come back because they all liked each other. What will happen now, for me at least, Marvel will target those. Because if you did an Avengers film and your big endgame moment is like everyone from the last 20 years, people will go. And that's what kind of frustrated me with Doctor Strange, is that for some reason, so many people built up in their head that Doctor Strange was going to be that. Yeah. And I think the issue with that, rightfully Marvel said this isn't true, we can't talk about it, but then people then started to create their own internal hype, and then I think so many people were creating their own inflicted hype builds of, is Tom Cruise going to be in it, is he going to be in it? It was never ever going to be that in the first place. It was Sam Raimi doing his Doctor Strange horror film, which is what he got to do. That's why he did it. And I think Marvel's in a position where they're gonna start calling for those big guns, because if Kang is we got to the Council of Kangs at the end.
Yeah.
It's a threat. There's going to be a lot of him. There's going to be a lot of threats, and it's going to need, because a multiverse can't just be the same people from the same universe. You can't have the same people that took out Thanos turn up, and we've got the new Avengers, we've got the young Avengers, whatever we're going to call them. There's going to be so many different boxes jumping in. It will be intriguing to see what happens, but I think personally, this isn't me off statistics, this isn't me off numbers. I don't think the casual moviegoer, I don't think is going to see this through. Because now they've seen this credit scene, they will think, do I need to watch that Loki? But I thought Loki died in Avengers. And the problem is, if people aren't keeping up to date, and this is where this echo chamber thing comes around again. Some people in an echo chamber don't realize that not everyone has Disney Plus, not everyone's watched Disney Plus. Yes, it's a big thing, but people would watch Marvel because you could dip into a film every few months. when you're telling them you've got to watch this film, then this show, then that film, then this show, then this show, then that film, that's where they're going to disappear now. And I think they've, over the last 2 years, have alienated a lot of fans. But to give them a bit of credit back, them this week saying there's going to be 2 shows this year. They've just delayed the Marvels till November the 10th, which is important because that was going to get absolutely massacred, releasing next to Oppenheimer, Barbie, Mission Impossible, and Indiana Jones. It would have completely bombed. And now it's releasing next to June and the Hunger Games, which I'm still not 100% sure the Marvels will actually come out from that. I think they know they've got a lot of work to do. I'm not going to say blame Bob Chapek or blame Bob Iger for those, but I think Kevin Feige knows now, maybe the last 2-3 years haven't gone as well as I thought they would, or because what's unparalleled of Marvel is that the first 3 phases have worked to universally perfection. Generally, audiences have loved them. Financially, it's proven that they've had people come and go. There's been no bombs. Review-wise, they were always pretty high by maybe 1 or 2 out of those first 25, 26 films. Whereas now, they're in a very awkward predicament where they're dropping off numbers financially. They're dropping off numbers from critics that are liking their stuff. Now, people don't admit this, but critics do not. There will be a casual person will just look at Rotten Tomatoes score and think, okay, that's meant to be rubbish. I'll save my money. And I think now the big thing, and I've had a friend tweet this to me today, I'll just wait till Disney Plus. That's going to affect them now because people know that Disney Plus films are going to come out like 4 weeks after. Yeah, and I know they delayed it for Black Panther. I know that Avatar's not dropped on there. I think we're going to go back to the old system of like 4 or 5 months before it goes online rather than 5 weeks. And that will also encourage people to go to the cinema. So sorry to divert away from Ant-Man, but that's how I feel with Marvel. What are your thoughts on that kind of scenario? Like, do you think there's too much happening too soon?
Yeah, I mean, when they said they were going to drop stuff down, that was that was a good thing to me. I was keeping up anyway, but I know that other people were getting that sort of Marvel burnout where there was always something like every other week or something for them to watch. The fact that they've dropped it down to 2, I think is perfect. I mean, I understand they have to keep it connected because it's the Marvel Cinematic Universe. So that's absolutely fine. As long as you don't have the sort of consistency that you were getting with She-Hulk and Miss Marvel, like there was so much to keep up on, and with the sort of like Star Wars stuff as well.
They want to air
because
the
they
same
were
time,
running it. Yeah, well, there was some that it would be like Marvel, then Star Wars, then Marvel, then Star Wars. It was always something to watch, but it was always dropping weekly. So you had people that would wait for the whole thing to come out and then just binge watch it.
Yeah.
I think the fact that they're dropping it down to like 2 shows a year or 2 shows a quarter, whatever, that's absolutely fine as long as the sort of quality goes up again. Because at the time they were sacrificing quality for quantity. I mean, that's reflected in She-Hulk. Some of the CGI in that is awful. Now, I didn't mind the show, but it's not a show that I'd watch again. Whereas stuff like that they were doing before, like, I mean, taking it way back to Daredevil on Netflix, that was amazing. I'd watch that over and over again if I had to. I mean, that's not a thing. But the fact that they're dropping it down to like 2 shows a year, that's great because then you won't get that Marvel burnout, or you wouldn't think so. But as long as the quality stays high,
this is it. Quality is the most important thing, and I think they've got it wrong. I think they were doing quantity before quality, but 3 films and 2 shows a year, I think the average person could keep up with. As long as it isn't, it has to be these orders. And I'll tell you what I did love, and these are under the radar. I was quite late to them, these special features. Like they did the special for Guardians. And I think they're better off doing a lot of them over shows. And it's not going to be big, but that might bring in the average person like, oh, just a 55-minute feature. It's not tying into this and this and this. But it's a way for them to do that. And I think Miss Marvel I really enjoyed, and I'd waited to do it all together. And I was like, I don't want to watch that weekly. And I think I benefited from doing it together because I was able to absorb it as one. Whereas certain shows like WandaVision work much better on a week-to-week gap. And
Yeah.
this is kind of what frustrates me with a lot of what they're doing at the moment is there seems to be a lot of stuff happening behind the scenes. There'll be stuff that we'll never hear about. There'll be politics. There'll be company politics. But they're shooting themselves in the foot. You know, they must know that, you know, you've just an end game. You're losing Cap and Ayman, who have essentially forged it to where it is now. And it's like, who is left to run these? And, you know, we know Fantastic Four is going to be massive. We know Spider-Man's Four's in the works as well. You've got your guaranteed hitters. But it's about sustaining the product in between now and then. And this is why I think Ant-Man's quite a worrying one to start on. And also for them just to be like, oh, this is phase 5.
Yeah.
Definitely not. I mean, and also the first few phases, they weren't, you know, they're across multiple years, not a singular calendar year. Black Widow is technically in phase 4, but it's a prequel set during phase 2. I don't think so.
Yeah.
And that's what kind of is concerning is them just grouping it. And I think even the structure of calling it a phase doesn't work as much now. Now we know it's a multiverse saga. I'm going to take all of this post-Endgame stuff as one, bar Black Widow, because again, that's just a film. That film's an apology. That not have any disrespect to itself, but they waited too long to do a Black Widow film, and the character was dead by the time it came out. And obviously, it released during a pandemic, which didn't help it even more. But it's weird. It's an awkward predicament, and kind of Ant-Man's like stuck in the middle of it. That this was being shot during lockdown. As we know, there were reshoots. I think what's going to be more telling is the Marvels in November. Does that extra 4 months give the CGI teams the chance to make it look good? Because the CGI's never looked terrible on earlier Marvel stuff. It's really been, recently. I'll be honest, Infinity War Endgame, which I know we're all shot on a studio space with secrecy, but they've going from, you know, we're shooting on location. Oh, we don't want people spoiling stuff. We'll do it all in the studio. If you don't want people spoiling stuff, then make sure you have that location locked down with security. Star Wars does it easy every time. And Marvel could do it if they wanted to, but it's always just felt like an excuse for them to sit there in a studio. And, you know, why should CGI artists be like making doors when that's the set designer's job? You're robbing them of someone that could do a good job, and they're going to lose them. They're going to lose themselves. And I hope there's fundamental changes moving forward. I know this is a really weird way to sort of merge the view onto, but kind of in line of that, I mean, do you have any favourite scenes you'd want to speak about? If I'm being honest, I've got nothing nice to say except Kang.
My favourite bit is when Paul and Kang have that hand-to-hand fight. And you see Kang beating the absolute shit out of Ant-Man. Because at that point, it shows you, even without his tech, how capable Kang is. And I think one thing I noticed is, just going back to Kang, is whenever Kang is on screen, there are no one-liners, there is no jokes. And I think that reflects, again, how capable he is, how scary that villain is. Whereas when you've got Paul Rudd on screen and you've got Cassie and stuff like that, there's one-liners left, right, and center, which is fine. Like, it's Paul Rudd, he's a comedic actor anyway. But I think my favorite bits are when Kang is on screen, and he's just like, I mean, like the bit where, I mean, you have that saying in, I think it was in Thor, or at the end of Infinity War, or before that, sorry, where you've got that post-credit scene where Thanos takes the gloves and says, "Fine, I'll do it myself." You have that moment in Quantumania as well, where he sees his forces getting absolutely demolished. So he's like, fuck it, I'll do it myself. And he goes to town on the rebellion. And it just shows you how powerful he is there. So everything about Kang is great. My other favorite bit, which we haven't touched on, is when MODOK dies. Because I've said it before, I don't like how Marvel treat their villains, because they always like kill them off like straight away. Like Ultron, they could have done so much more, but they just killed him off. There's rumors that he's coming back in the one with the Vision, but the show with the Vision, I can't remember what it's called.
There's always rumors, though, isn't there, for Ultron?
Yeah. But the fact that MODOK died and they killed him off, I loved it because MODOK was god awful. I don't I don't want to see him back ever again. Just because, I mean, as a character, he's interesting. He could work, but the fact they had that actor and the CGI was so bad, it was like they fucked up the aspect ratio on his face.
Yeah, they
and
just
left
they
it there.
took his face and just stretched it a bit, and
Yeah,
it
it was just god awful. But the fact that he's dead now is fine. Don't bring him back. We don't need him. Don't do it like that again. Just leave it.
I think my biggest problem with MODOK is that I don't think MODOK's a character that could ever work in a live action film. You know, there's certain franchises and certain just designs where they just can't function. Having MODOK have the metallic face, I was like, okay, you can get away with that as a mask because it won't work below. And then obviously then what they had is like that Facebook meme, is it, where like you stick someone's face in a jar and put it in the fridge. I think someone's been like, their head's been chopped off or something. It was just, it's one of the worst things I think I've ever seen in the film. And I was just sat there just contemplating life in the screening, not at MODOK, just at everything. Like, why am I here? Like, why am I watching this? Why am I going to end up talking about this today? And it was just so... I don't have the word. I'm not going to say the word. But it was just one of those. I think MODOK epitomised that. And it's kind of sad because if it is true that Paul Rudd turned in, that his own draft of a film to be about MODOK name, I bet that would have been all right. If he was his own villain in his own storyline.
Yeah,
it's not been confirmed. It's heavily, heavily rumoured. But it just wouldn't surprise me. And it's going back to what I said earlier. Edgar Wright's the reason the first Ant-Man worked, not Peyton Reed and Painter, sorry. Sorry, I was even getting mixed up. It's one of the Peytons, one of them's not the one from Cobra Kai, obviously. But yeah, no, I'm glad you brought the fight scene of that Kang because I did get worried. When they went hand to hand, I was like, you can't have Kang lose a fist fight to Ant-Man. Like, look at Jonathan Majors. You cannot have him lose a fist fight to Paul Rudd. And I'm glad he didn't, to that respect of actual fist fight. And I think what that does, again, down the line, we've seen Kang physically, we've seen Kang with his technology, we've seen his mind, how he works. And this is one variant. This is one of the variants, the one that the other variant didn't want. So, and we've seen him in Loki. He Who Remains, a very different type. It must be an incredible role for Jonathan Majors, and I just hope that they do him justice because he is going to be a star. He is going to be right up there over the next couple of years, and his approach to this role, I think I like the most today is what you said, that it wasn't jokes, it wasn't one-liners. He's someone that spoke of conviction and you believed in. Like, well, just the fact he was acting is that his character, there is a character in there. And that's what I want to see more of, which we know we're going to get more of. So thank God they've already announced, Secret Wars and Dynasty. I know there's a lot of other ones in production. There's a lot of Marvel films in production. And for Martin in the comments, if he's still watching, the report is they believe its worldwide box office opening weekend will be 280 million, which is obviously a lot of money. But for a Marvel film, for a worldwide opening, is once again very much below their own standards. Normally,
I think the numbers have dropped considering since COVID as well.
I think now box office this year, the box office is going to be insane. There's going to be so many great films coming out. We're going to go back to the old ways where if a film's not good, it will bomb, and there'll be a film that comes out around it that makes the money. This isn't going to bomb, by the way. It's still going to be a hit. And I think this will be. There's no excuses for Marvel's box office this year. I believe, if I'm being honest, that not the whole Top Gun Save Cinema narrative, but box office. Avatar's now the third highest grossing film in history. The audiences will go, but I think they're going to be more specific about what films they're going to watch these days. And I think Marvel might at the end of the summer be in a very awkward predicament. So I'm not going to make silly comparisons. Guardians is going to be a massive hit. But yeah, it'll be interesting to follow this over the coming weeks. But that aside, final thoughts on the film for me. As I said, I think this is the worst MCU film. It's everything that's wrong with everything Marvel related at the moment. Bar Jonathan Majors as Kang, he's the only reason I give this film a shred of credibility. Everything else, I could quite happily never see again in my lifetime. But I know, over to you.
It's not another film that I'll watch. I mean, if I was going to watch it, I'd watch it I'd watch the end credit scene, the post credit scene, because I was interested in how they're going to do Kang generally, because he is such a weird character with all the time multiverse stuff. I mean, I like the fact that they teased Ramata, Immortus, and Nathaniel Richards as separate characters, and that worked really well. Hopefully, we'll see a little bit more of Kang in Fantastic
Loki,
Four,
I think
because Ramata is fundamentally a Fantastic Four villain. So if they don't do Doctor Doom, they could do Ramata. And I've been hearing, I think, is Fantastic Four going to be set where they've already got it's not going to be an origin story for them. They've already got their powers and they're established.
I'm going to be blunt because I know they're in casting now. I think they did an update recently that they're going to do casting this month. I think it's going to be an origin. I think Marvel are completely deluded if they think everyone knows the Fantastic Four origin. There's been
I think it's one of those
films.
Yeah, well,
people know the characters, but they don't know the origin. And I think, if I'm being honest, like X-Men, you can't just put them in the MCU. Say these guys have been in the whole time. I think you've got to give them something to work off. And
I mean, it worked for Spider-Man because we've had 2 franchises based off Spider-Man. With Fantastic Four, you have Fantastic Four 1 and 2, which worked. But they were okay. I mean, they fucked up Galactus. We won't go into that. And then they had Fan Four-tastic, which was Michael B. Jordan and Miles Teller. Yeah. And that was just that. Yeah, don't do that.
That was Josh Trank all over, wasn't it? That was just awful.
Yeah. But yeah, if they do an origin story, then do an origin story. Maybe have Doctor Doom, but have Ramata in there somewhere. Because then it ties into everything else. And having the Council of Kangs was really interesting as well, because then it makes me interested to see the Council of Reed and see how they can do that as well. But I mean,
before they go, sorry.
Yeah, depending on how they do it, I'd be interested. Jonathan Majors carries this, is my final thoughts, and the post-credit scenes are interesting. I'm interested in watching Loki season 2 to see how they do that as well. Seeing as that was set, they had that scene set in the 1920s or something, with another variant of Kang as well. Final thoughts. Yeah, I don't think I'm going to watch it again. I know that one of our friends wants to watch it, and we've got those Cineworld cards, so we can watch it for free in 2D. So potentially I might do that. But yeah, I wouldn't pay money to see it again.
No, I'm with you on that. And I think this is all that the film ends with Kang will return. It wasn't Ant-Man will return, it was Kang will return at the end of the credits. So, and that's the big thing going forward for me. So that's going to do it for this review. Bit of a different one. And as we said before, people, if you've seen the film, let us know your thoughts on it. Please do comment below your thoughts on Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania. If you did like this review, if you're not fuming at thoughts, then maybe hit the subscribe button so Marvel will come back. I don't know when Secret Invasion is going to be. I don't think they put a release date.
I think they pushed that back as well.
Probably after when Mandalorian's finished. I wouldn't be surprised if after Mandalorian's finished, they'll put Secret Invasion out. And for anybody at home, if you want to find us, follow us on social media, find out what else is coming out, get us on there. Twitter and Instagram at @Simon_Savvy, Facebook at @Cinema_Savvy, a link to Redbubble. What else is coming out? Cocaine Bear comes out next Friday. As does season 5 of Drive to Survive. I have the series. I have not watched it yet because I've been too busy, and season 4 was terrible. So there may be a review out on Thursday for season 5 of Drive to Survive, which is the day before the series drops. But yeah, any updates, get us on social medias. Tomorrow night, we have The Last of Us. Episode 6 airs tonight. So there'll be a spoiler discussion going out tomorrow evening, as we have done every week. Best thing on TV at the moment, the best show of the year. I don't care that it's February. It is going to be the best show of this year. So if you do enjoy those, do join us on there. But Ayman, thank you once again for coming on, taking time out your weekend to do this review, for putting up with me being fuming at this film, and to everyone else at home for the same thing. Take care, and see you on the next one.